And the Olympic torch is certainly not the only thing bringing people out into the streets around the world. High food prices, a nuisance in America, but much more than that elsewhere in the world. You are looking right here at riots. The crisis has turned violent. At least 7 people are dead in Egypt. That's what you're looking at now, following riots and bread lines. Rice shortages are now forcing the government to ban exports, and it is not just Egypt. It is countries in Africa and countries in Asia. It is a global crisis, and we want to bring in a task force to talk about this. Divya Reddy is Energy and Natural Resources Analyst for the Eurasia Group. She's joined with trader Vic Lespinas. He's with grainanalyst.com. Okay, good to have both of you with us. Divya, I wanted to give you a chance just to set the stage here. It may amaze Americans who are upset at high food prices to see pictures like they just saw there about riots, people's lives literally at stake thanks to the surge in food prices. Can you just explain what we're seeing around the world right now?
Yeah, what's happening is that as food prices and most recently rice prices have increased dramatically over the past few months, in a country like Egypt where about 40% of the population lives at or below the poverty line, the effect on the average household budget is profound. And so what's happening is that these protests are breaking out in response to high prices and the inability of people to pay for it.
And then, Divya, on top of that, you have governments saying we're not going to export, whether it's wheat or whether it's rice, because they're worried about shortages at home and the problem's getting worse and worse, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exporting countries are imposing curbs on exports in order to keep prices stabilized at home. But what that's doing is increasing the price of those commodities globally and is making the problem worse for importing countries.
Vic, where are prices headed then? Is there any relief in sight, or is this just something we can't do anything about?
Well, I think for the time being, prices are likely still headed higher. But the summer growing season is still ahead of us. And if we have normal weather over the next several months, then I think prices will subside later this year. And I think a year from now, they could be considerably lower. We've already seen a big sell-off in the wheat market from a month ago. Rice, though, is still right up near its all-time highs, roughly double where it was a year ago. And there are these riots going on. A lot of countries have stopped exporting rice. But, again, if we have normal weather, farmers will respond the way they always do to high prices, and that is they'll increase production sharply, and that'll put a lot of downward pressure on grain prices around the world.
And I want to make sure viewers know, we were going to be joined today, actually, by the minister in Egypt who deals with this sort of issue, food, also trade and the economy, actually not here because he had to deal with the crisis in Egypt. I want to make sure that people understand how serious this is. Divya, is the problem, though, that we have right now a shortage of food because of the weather, or that we now have too many people who hypothetically can afford better food?
Well, the problem in Egypt is also has to do with the fact that the government has, for a very long time now, subsidized the price of bread. And so as prices of other food commodities have risen, there has been a huge surge in the demand for bread. And that's why you see all these queues forming at bakeries and tensions forming in those lines. And since the distribution channels for this subsidized bread have been corruption-ridden, the black market has formed that's charging a much higher price. And so that's one of the problems that Egypt is facing.
And Vic, who's driving trade right now? I mean, you look at bread. Egypt is the world's biggest consumer, so big consumer of wheat. But when you look at the prices, who's setting that price? Is it speculators right now, or the countries and people and companies that actually need the food?
Well, I'd say it's a combination. There is some speculative interest. There's growing speculative interest in the market because they're just going where the market's trending higher. The stock market is not doing very well, and the commodities markets are doing extremely well, not just grains, but energy, metals, all the commodities have done very well over the last year or so. The stock market has languished, and that's brought speculative money into the grains. Also, there's weather problems. Australia, for example, the last 2 years in a row, their wheat crop was cut in half by extreme drought. So that has helped push prices higher as well. Then you have rising living standards in various countries, especially China and India. Right. They want to eat better, they're buying more. And finally, you've got this big demand for biofuel, which is using up a lot of grain that in the past would have gone for food, and now it's going to make fuel.
All right, well, Divya and Vic, thank you very much. We'll continue to cover this story, but we wanted to make sure we had a chance to share with you some of the footage to bring this story home in a way that articles and words cannot always do successfully. Any thoughts on this story, email us streetsigns@cnbc.com. Now a break, and on the other side of it, imagine your corporate